You hear this a lot in relationships nowadays that I can never care for another person. Or you hear that I'd rather cry in a Rolls Royce than a Tacoma.
At the end of the day, you are a great person. We have a great heart, and that's all that matters.
Thank you, my love. So
like
why wouldn't you want to take me seriously?
I feel like people they judge this, but really need to judge this. You know? They judging this too
You
much.
are so sweet.
So you need to stop letting people hit that and hit this.
I don't want to. Caring about somebody only gets you like hurt. I don't want to be hurt no more. But I do want to settle down and get a husband and some kids.
That's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna do it.
Try. I like those strikes though. And it's sad because you realize people are not really doing the work to improve after they've been through something traumatic. And I get it, because it's super hard to go through something like a heartbreak or really being invested in somebody and not working out. And it's hard to realize that if your goal is to get married, you're only marry one person. So every relationship fails essentially if the goal is to get married and go over with somebody, have kids, etc. Right? And I guess it's easier to have sex and have multiple partners than actually to commit to somebody and see how it goes. And a lot of people say dating and stuff should be fun. It should. But the idea that a lot of people are not telling the truth about themselves, and everybody's trying to impress everybody instead of them being themselves and being honest with what they want. So a lot of times you see a lot of relationships on false pretense. Hell, you see a lot of marriages on false pretense too. But I think a lot of times is that we don't take enough time in between relationships to evaluate what went wrong and what right in those relationships in order to improve on to the next relationship. Because I think a lot of times, guys and girls, we pick the same girl, pick the same guys, have the same issues, and just different names of the person. It might be different situations, but they're similar in a way, right? Like you're not growing in your relationships with the people you're having. And I think it gets frustrating because you keep getting hurt. You keep getting overlooked or whatever the case is, and you're wondering why nobody's picking you. But it's easier to just have multiple partners, sex partners or whatever, and not really having to commit to somebody because the pain of losing somebody or feeling like you got embarrassed or got played or got, thrown to the side like it was nothing used. But if you feel like you want to be in control, and I think that's really what it's about, being in control of your life. Because when you're hurt, heartbroken or anything like that, you don't feel like you're in control anymore. That person that you want so bad is in control. That person that left you, feel like you want revenge from that person. Like you should have gotten something out of it more than what you have. Got the power and you want the keys. It's the same thing when people say you get in relationships. It's just people just doing this tug of war. Like this man gotta do this X, Y, and Z to get me, or this woman needs to bring this, and this, X, Y, and Z in order to be with me. Like what you bring. Remember that whole thing about what do you bring to the table? And I think it's just a whole conversation about you gotta bring more than me for me to commit to you because I'm such a great person. But at the end of the day, getting in a relationship with somebody, it's a gamble. It's always going to be a gamble because people are unpredictable, right? It's no foolproof method to how to date. It's no foolproof method on how to find the right person. You kind of have to live life, and you kind of have to evaluate relationships, even the worst ones you have, so you don't make the same mistake over and over again. And even then, you might get it wrong. But I think evolving after relationships, and sometimes in relationships, learning yourself, actually listening to yourself physically and mentally, because your body sometimes, I remember being in relationships where I'd be physically sick and ill because my body's telling me physically, this is not the person you need to be with, this is not the person you should be giving your energy to. And as soon as I leave that person, I'm fine, like the next day. And we desperately want relationships that are not good for us to work, and it's never going to work. It's never going to be the right person when it's not supposed to be, right? And it's always going to feel like you're on edge, always feel like you got anxiety, always feel like you're not yourself when you're around this person, when you're trying to make it work. It's never going to be right, and you're scared because you don't feel like if I go on a level, I'm never going to find somebody. And you see a lot of people settling. You see a lot of people just taking what they can get towards the end because they're just so tired of trying, right? They just want to be with somebody. It doesn't matter if it's my soulmate or not. And that's a sad thing because dating should teach you how to maneuver in relationships with the opposite sex or the same sex, depending on what you're into. But it's supposed to show you, hey, I don't need to accept that behavior, or I shouldn't accept that behavior. Hey, I actually like when people do this. I didn't realize that about myself, that I need this. And it's going to take you having a very good sense of yourself, a good sense of power, a good sense of how you feel about yourself to get in relationships, because sometimes they're not going to work out. And you're going to have a sense of, it's okay, I'm going to find my person eventually. But if you don't have a good sense of yourself, that's when you see people acting erratic as far as like stalking or not letting it go, or you see years later they're still caring and loving for that person. And I always say that people are not as good as you make them. They're only as good as you make them in your head, right? If you think they're awesome, it's because you're telling yourself they're awesome. Same thing about what you tell yourself about yourself. You're telling yourself that you suck. But if you keep telling yourself that you're great, then you're going to be great. It's kind of like that. But I just noticed that people don't really want to work on themselves. They just want it to work, regardless if it's a good relationship or not. They just want it to work. But if you actually worked on yourself and love yourself and cared about yourself and set standards for yourself, it might take a little longer, but eventually you're going to get to what you want, you know?